The idea that there's any letter in the alphabet that most people can't write is pretty insane. We spend an obscene amount of time learning the alphabet after all, writing out every letter over and over again until they're all perfect.
I hate cursive and I hate all of you! I'm never coming back to school, never!
But when researchers from Johns Hopkins University published the results of a very strange study, they revealed that when they asked people about the two forms of the lowercase g, most failed. Almost none of the subjects could write the second form, and some even denied that there were two different versions of the little g, despite seeing it all the time.
Well, who are you?
That's the letter G.
I didn't ask you, Gooster. I was asking the funny-shaped kid.
Anyone who writes the lowercase g by hand is most certainly writing what's called the open-tail g. It's the one everyone is taught in school, so it sticks in the brain. The other is the loop-tail G, and that's the one that's used in most print media, particularly those that use ultra-common fonts like Times New Roman. It's common in books. Time found that 74% of children's picture books use it. It's in 89% of kids' chapter books, and a whopping 97% of adult books use it. But our brains are apparently incapable of remembering it. Researchers put their subjects through a series of tasks, including one as simple as picking the correct loop-tail G from among several incorrectly written ones. Most couldn't. How the heck can we not recognize a G? Part of it might be the fact that most kids aren't taught to write the loop-tail G, and lessons focus on the open-tail version. That means the loop-tail version becomes more of what Time calls a stylistic conceit than a letter. We only need to recognize the former, not write it ourselves, so lazy human brains just don't bother. Researchers suggest this is a huge deal for a few reasons. They suspect children who have reading difficulties from a young age might be getting stumped by this pretty common letter. Let's face it, it doesn't really make sense to teach kids to write one way and read something else. It also makes them wonder just what it says about how we retain information. If we see things all the time, we should remember it, right? But for some reason, we're constantly exposed to this one pesky letter and the shape just doesn't stick with us.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because, Mr. Reynolds, science is a liar sometimes.
So where did this rogue G come from anyway? The Atlantic found that the cryptic, mysterious, seemingly invisible loop-tail G is the original version. It's been tracked back to 8th century monks who spent their entire lives praying, copying religious text, and praying some more. The style of writing they used was Carolingian script, including the weird G. Anyone today who thinks the loop-tail G is unnecessarily complicated agrees with the monks. By the 15th century, monks and scribes had turned the very pretty letter into a sort of shorthanded version of itself, and it's what kids are taught in their penmanship lessons today. It stuck mainly because the printing press was invented around the same time that the open-tail G took its place in Gothic script. When books were printed, they used Gothic letters that looked similar to handwriting. Check out any of the Gothic family of fonts today, and they still use the open-tail G like the one that's written by hand. What gives? When the Renaissance rolled around, people wanted to revive the old ways, including Carolingian script. That became the go-to for printers because it looked fancy, but when it came to writing by hand, people went the easy route. Who knew there was so much to learn about a single letter?